Hello and welcome to What's Next. It's the Indy NXT Oval Series here from the Milwaukee Mile, the oldest continuously operated motorsports facility on the face of planet Earth. Joining me as always is Sophie Connell. And Sophie, legends are made here, and you know quite a few across the open wheel scene that have made their mark here at Indianapolis. What do we expect to see here tonight?
Yeah, for sure. This is one of the oldest tracks. Every legend you could think of has raced it here at some point, whether it's Andretti, Foyt, more modern ones like Sebastian Bourdais, or even IndyCar's most recent winner in Christian Rasmussen. I expect to see a lot of short track racing, which on these smaller cars isn't really as much of a short track as it is in the IR18, but there's going to be a lot of tire fall off. You're going to be putting a lot of strain on those tires. And honestly, I expect to see Dylan Wylozinski trying to be out for a little revenge after what happened at Iowa last week.
Yeah, Wylozinski losing control, seemingly all on his own early in the going from Iowa, looking to make another comeback to the top step of the podium here at Milwaukee. And we'll get to qualifying here as drivers are starting to roll off the grid to get underway here. We'll ride out with Rogue Racing's Blaze Andrich. He's back again this week. We'll see what he's up to in qualifying here. Get on board the number 3 machine here tonight. He's heading off turn number 4 for his first of 2 qualifying laps. And the big thing that we're going to see here is drivers kind of skirting around various locations around the track to try to carry as much corner speed as possible. It's almost a very deceptive track here at Milwaukee with just how much you can carry entry speed and roll through that center and off the corner here, especially in the lower grooves that you would think, given the extra turning radius you're making, that you need to slow up for a bit more.
For sure, and that is one of the weird quirks of Milwaukee, is there is so many lines you can run. I'm sure Jacob and any of the IndyCar people watching this broadcast are reminded of the year where you basically just had to grip and rip the top. That has changed, thankfully, but there's a diversity of lines you could run. Carrying a lot of speed on the top is a lot easier, but ultimately it's really just about carrying that middle of corner speed there, Jacob.
Yeah, the center of the corner seems to be where all the time is gained and lost, and that comes from kind of just how these drivers get on the steering wheel around here. We're going to see it over the course of the races, particularly as those tires wear. The drivers are going to have to start lifting and rolling more progressively through these very long, winding turns here at Milwaukee. Commonly used as a testing track for NASCAR over the years, particularly for their flatter ovals like New Hampshire. Of course, having hosted the infamous Denny Hamlin came in on the helicopter race. I was there in attendance back in 2007 when he had to claw his way back through the field, filling back in for Eric Almirola, who started that race. Of course, that was one of the last times that we saw NASCAR here until fairly recently when the Truck Series returned in 2023. IndyCar, of course, having run here a number of times, returning most recently in 2024. And they'll be back here in 26 for another doubleheader, much like that return year that later this year, alongside the likes of Indy NXT and the USF Pro 2000 Series. And we've got ourselves the bulk of the drivers having taken their qualifying times. Couple stragglers still getting out on the course, the likes of Gary Yost, Miles Morris. Good to see him back here. Ryan Brown, last week's winner. He's finally taken to the course. We'll ride outboard with him. Try to get an idea of maybe what he's trying to get figured out here from Milwaukee. But I think the thing that we're going to see here tonight is going to be drivers having to manage tires and manage expectations as to how much they can push these cars. As we know, there are no extra sets of tires, so even if we do catch a yellow here this week, there's not an opportunity for drivers to kind of save themselves on a pair of fresh Firestones.
For sure, Jacob. And there's an interesting conundrum to think about here. If you are one of these drivers, if you are not a Dylan Wylozinski or an Indy Kirkenbauer who currently sit 1-2 in the session, you're going to be in clean air, right? If you're those two people. Everyone else has dirty air. The dirtier air you're in, the harder you work your tires. So do you push early to get to the front to maybe save a little tire? Or do you have to play it conservative and lag back?
And that'll be the kind of the key of the race here. We're going to get into the starting grid as drivers start to make their way onto the course for tonight's 55-lap event here from the Milwaukee Mile. We'll start rolling through that grid as they get lined up here now. And it will be Dylan Wylazinski back on the pole once more with a 24.240. Alongside him will be current reigning series champion in Indy Kirkwood for Votive Racing. Zachary Falm from the Formula Indy Series fame, he'll line up third alongside Luke Reed, who I've been actually coaching a good bit on the road side of things through the Votive Racing League. Good to see him making an appearance here on the top split here tonight. Chris Fletcher in the orange car once more. He'll line up fifth in the number 5. Crash Neon with a solid qualifying effort here this week. He'll start a bit closer to the front than we've seen the last couple weeks out of him. He'll be looking to capitalize on that 6th place starting spot tonight. Clay Kirkenbauer will line up 7th alongside last week's winner in Ryan A. Brown. Jarrett Corey for Luke Mansky Racing will line up in 9th alongside Taylor Thurman in the 10th spot. And we'll move to J.W. Miller, who will be lining up. Raced J.W. a good couple times for Indy Pro competition. He'll be back here in 11th alongside Road Racing's Blaze Andrich in the number 3. John Corrin, good to see him back. He'll be lining up 13th alongside Jason Goodman. Miles Morris, who's I believe mostly a dirt track guy, he'll make another appearance here at Indy NXT competition, lining up 15th. Last car taking time. Gary Yost will line up 16th in the number 6, and Wayne Campbell will line up 17th of 17 here tonight. Strength of field just over 3,500. And we only get one pace lap around here. This track is big enough to where iRacing has determined we get one pace lap. So it's a good thing we got through that starting lineup as quickly as we did. And we'll get ready to watch drivers take on the famed 1 mile oval here in West Allis, Wisconsin. Played host to pretty much everybody and their grandson in terms of racing talent. Pace car is going to lead them off turn number 4, put the field in control of Dylan Wylazinski. Pace car pulls off relatively late here. We won't see pit lane action here tonight, but that is a very tricky pit lane to get down, and it makes these starts very awkward for these drivers, as we'll see Dylan Wylazinski launch.
Yeah, and he gets a good launch, caps at least 2 car lengths to Indy Kirkwood and sends it off into turn number 1. Zachary Falm's looking on the inside, but not quite there, so Indy Kirkwood slots in the second. Zachary Falm slots into third.
Yeah, that kind of puts the battle towards the bottom portion of the top 5. We'll put Falm, Reed, and Neon kind of under a blanket here as the rest of the field kind of remains double file as it stands all the way down to the bottom portion of the top 10 with the likes of Jarrett Corey and J.W. Miller.
Yeah, it looks like they're starting to get a little more settled there towards the front of the pack. In the middle of the pack, though, it looks like there's still some people too wide trying to sort everything out. Likes of Jarrett Corey on the high side, fighting over the 10th position, that number 13 machine.
Yeah, the winner last night at Zandvoort in the Road Series. He'll be looking to try to make some momentum forward as we see Wylazinski go purple with a 24.415. And we're going to see that time fall down briefly as these tires get up to temperature. But before too long, we're going to see that pace kind of fall back to this point and beyond, as we've seen average lap times here be about a half a second slower than the fastest laps these drivers can do around here in Milwaukee. So it'll be very interesting to see when that happens. Dylan, once again, purple, 24.198 that time by.
Yeah, it's safe to say those Firestones are getting up to temperature. I don't expect anyone to be going purple much longer after this. As J.W. Miller and Jason Goodman are currently beefing over the 12th position.
Yeah, Miller on the high side here, trying to hold it tough, if you will. We'll see him kind of cede that to Mr. Goodman on the inside there. Goodman will be looking to hunt down Clay Kirkenbauer at the bottom portion of the top 10 here. And we have started to see this field spread out. You've got the likes of Miles Morris a bit way back off the field, some 6 seconds back. And I'd imagine if we get a long green flag run here, it would not be surprising to see lap traffic start to play a factor late in the going here.
For sure. During qualifying, their 1st to 15th was barely covered by 0.2 of a second, but there was a gap back to some of the other cars that set a time. So it's definitely possible that they will start running into lap traffic. Yeah, and it looks like there's an interesting scrap here towards the middle of the pack from 5th back to 10th with Ryan A. Brown, Crash Neon, Chris Fletcher, Taylor Thurman, and Jarrett Corey all taking different lines, trying to get a run on each other.
Yeah, it's the tightest group of cars we have out on the track now. We'll get those gaps up on screen so you can see just how close this group of cars is together. You got Brown roughly about 3/4 of a second back, and Luke Reed ahead of him. And then back to Taylor Thurman, sits only about another half a second back, so these cars are basically fighting side by side right on top of each other. As you'll see Crash Neon tuck in behind Chris Fletcher here in 6th.
And Taylor Thurman's looking low, trying to maybe capitalize on some loss of momentum from Crash Neon. It doesn't appear to be the case. Neon hangs tough in the 7th position.
Yeah, we're starting to see a bit of that line experimentation, especially for these cars a bit closer together. You see guys kind of getting near to that rumble strip on the inside of the track. Some guys opting to run a bit further up towards the edge of that the more fresh pavement on that lower groove. Definitely a couple lanes to try to maximize the corner speed here, and that seems to be where drivers are going to be struggling the most, is getting an idea of just how much is too much in any given direction. We'll actually hop on board with Jarrett Corey, who's trying to work on Crash Neon for the 7th spot now, get an idea of what Jarrett's seeing from inside the car here from Milwaukee. Very relatively flat track here in Milwaukee. You don't really notice the banking until you're right up in the corners. Just a couple degrees on either end. I believe that figure sits at 3 down the straights, 2.5 rather, and then 9.25 in the corners. So it's very much a track that feels very, very flat, but still does have a bit of a lean to it, to the outer edges of it. As you see Jarrett head off into turn 1 here with the likes of Crash Neon.
J.W. Miller into the turn 1 wall.
We'll have to see what happened to Mr. Miller, but we caught him trying to get his car backed away from the outside wall. He'll opt to tow it. We'll get the cameras rewound, see what we can see with him. Looks like maybe a bit of contact heading off into turn number 1. We're heading off turn 4 here. I believe that's going to be the lights.
John Corwin.
Yeah, Corwin behind him. They'll head down into turn number 1. Corwin's going to look low, and JW is going to kind of wind up in a similar spot, and they're going to make contact left rear to right front, and that'll send JW into the wall, ending his night. Tough break for the driver, the number 9 here tonight. Not the result he was likely looking for heading into this one. Tough break here at just a little under the quarter-way mark here from Milwaukee. And this will be interesting to see. We'll get drivers an opportunity to kind of re-rack, restack here, get an idea of maybe what they can try to do to stay closer together, particularly on this restart. We know the leaders kind of put in an advantageous position as they can launch fairly early here, and that'll be putting everybody on their toes, trying to stay as close as they possibly can to the car ahead of them.
Yeah, for sure. And looking back on that incident between Corwin and Miller, it looks to be netcode, just slight amount of netcode, and that was enough to send JW around.
Yeah, that's something that is maybe a bit surprising to see on one of these shorter tracks play a factor, at least in this car in particular, but the corner speeds here are relatively high. We saw average speeds on the fast end of these laps nearing the 150-mile-an-hour mark, so certainly nothing to sneeze at in terms of just how fast these drivers are getting around the track here tonight. Do want to thank everybody for tuning in, likely coming from the earlier race just a couple miles down the virtual road at Chicagoland for the IndyCar Oval Series. Kyle Klendworth taking the win there for road racing tonight. He just barely missed the registration on this one. He'll be tuning in from the crowd. Glad to see him in the audience tonight. We do have coverage of the the Horizon IndyCar Series tomorrow night. That'll take place at, I believe, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They'll be live from the Iowa Speedway once more here on the channel. Mark Murphy on the call for that. And then the Votive Racing League will be playing host to its second round of Season 4, 8 p.m. Eastern Time this coming Sunday from Charlotte Motor Speedway. The lights are out on the pace car, and we're going to have ourselves the first single-file restart of the evening. We'll see what drivers are able to do to try to keep pace with the pace setter so far in Dylan Wylazinski.
For sure. You see Wylazinski tight up against that outside wall. It is illegal to pass to the inside. So the only spot you can pass is that outside. So Hill's going to be trapped behind Wylazinski until they do the start-finish line if he's running that high line. Wylazinski launches. Green flag is in the air.
Yeah, good jump for Mr. Wylashinski here. He'll take a good sizable gap over Indy Kirkenbauer. Does Indy have anything he can try to do to try to work his way back forward gap just over 0.4 of a second? He's looking to try to get as much draft as he possibly can to work his way back towards Dylan.
Yeah, and it looks like Crash Neon had a poor restart, but seems to be making ground again as he is side by side with the Indy NXT Road Point Series leader, Jarrett Corey.
Yeah, Jarrett working that high line. We've seen him work a number of times here on the oval side of things. He's looking to try to mount a charge further up the field. Crash Neon will slot into 8th behind him. That's going to be Chris Fletcher just ahead of Jarrett here in the Luke Mansky Racing Esports machine.
Milwaukee is one of those ovals that tends to favor road-oriented drivers, in my experience, Jacob. I wonder if that's true for you.
I certainly think it helps. You know, we talk about how these shorter ovals, particularly in the IndyCar, kind of favor themselves to drivers a bit more accustomed to being in corners more frequently, which tends to be the case for road drivers, obviously, because most road courses tend to have a larger number of them than the ovals. So certainly the case that I've seen across the board is that road drivers tend to be able to find themselves at great comfort on these shorter ovals, even at ones of great length like the one here in Milwaukee.
Once again, it's Dylan Wylashinski out front in front of Indy Kirkenbauer, the prodigy, and then Zachary Flom, the Formula Indy and Formula Super Series league runner. There's a battle for the 4th position between Luke Reed and Ryan A. Brown. Last week's winner, Brown on the inside, Reed on the outside. You'll see Brown make up some ground on that low line, but then Luke pulls back on the straightaways as they head off into turn number 1.
And this is a tough position for Luke to have himself in, right? You got to be so perfect working that outside lane to keep the momentum up enough to keep Ryan tucked in, trying to work his way around you. That's going to allow Jarrett Corey to work his way into the picture. He's made it by Chris Fletcher and is up to 6th now. He'll be knocking on the door of the top 5 here as these two continue to fight for 4th.
For sure, and you notice that Luke dove down low to try and take off some air. Corey ended up running in that rumble strip there to try and find any scrap of clean air on that front wing to keep the momentum up, as Luke Reed seems to be struggling as Corey manages to get underneath on the exit of 4.
Corey will be looking to the inside into turn 1 here. The big thing that we've noticed so far is that drivers that are able to work their way to the lowest portions of the track and kind of punch heavy into the throttle on exit have been making the most hay in terms of making passes. That'll include the likes of Brown and Corey, and they're going to be put in a battle for the 4th spot here before too long.
For sure, but there is a danger in that as the race goes on. Many a driver knows exactly what I'm referring to. Tracks like Milwaukee, tracks like New Hampshire, you're a little too aggressive with the tools, a little too aggressive with the throttle. You can burn off that right rear, and so instead of getting that good launch off that low side, as you see Jarrett Corey and Chris Fletcher working the low side of their respective battles, you can end up looping it, Jacob. That's definitely a concern one would have if you spend too much time leaning on that right rear.
Yeah, we're watching Corey and Brown side by side for the 4th spot here. And that's always the danger you put yourself at a track like this. We see it a good bit even in stock cars around here, is that when you kind of pick the throttle up and have a little bit too much steering wheel put in it, the car wants to kind of snap out from underneath you. As we see cars kind of start to get a little loose heading off turn 4 there. Maybe they're starting to feel a bit of that abuse on the tires here in the midway point of the race.
Yeah, for sure, Jacob. We're currently working lap 26, lap 27 of this 55-lap race, so people are feeling it already. They're certainly going to be feeling it when they get to lap 54 or lap 55.
Yeah, just under halfway now. Lead for Dylan Vilashinsky now out to about just under 0.6 of a second. It was down as low as 3, but Indy now starting to fall a bit backwards from Dylan. Brian Brown's finally cleared Jarrett Corey for the 4th spot. That'll keep him locked into the 4th position for now. We're going to hop back to 6th through 10th, or 6th through 9th, rather. You've got Chris Fletcher, Crash Neon, Taylor Thurman, and Luke Reed all working through 6th through 9th here. Very tightly packed here. Crash Neon looking to the inside of Chris Fletcher. He's going to be looking for a way around here before too long.
Sure, and there's a whole gaggle of cars too behind them. A lot of excellent fighting here in the mid-pack for some of these top 10 and knocking on the door of the top 10 positions.
As we get a bit closer to the track here, you'll see Crash Neon going to the inside of Chris Fletcher once again. He'll carry the speed up until right about this corner exit mark here, and you'll see Fletcher be able to start to inch his way forward, maybe a little bit of side draft down the straightaways here, and then Crash will have to kind of give up a little bit of ground on entry into 3 and 4 here, but ultimately be able to get back into the power and make that move stick for the 6th spot. Battle's back for 4th.
I was about to say, yeah, Battle is back on for 4th position with Jarrett Corey and Ryan Brown. Corey currently has the spot. Ryan Brown wants it back. Yeah, and those two have been side by side for the last couple of laps, Jacob.
Yeah, they'll go side by side into 3 and 4. Very tight off the corner between the two. Brown almost making contact with that outside wall off turn 4. They'll stay together for now. Corey going to run low once more. He's going to start to eke forward. Not quite clear off the corner. That's going to give Brown the momentum down the back straightaway, and they'll stay side by side into 3.
For sure. It looks like Jarrett was trying to restrict how low Ryan could run. Now he kind of does that slide job, but he's lost so much momentum doing that sliding the tires. Ryan Brown kind of gives him a hip check on entry there. Might have been some netcode contact there.
Yeah, it looks like the side pod might have come off of Corey's machine. That'll slow him down. He's likely not going to be too happy about that damage, regardless of how it got there.
So that'll move Ryan Brown up into the 4th spot permanently. Crash Neon now in pursuit. Chris Fletcher sits in 6th. Jarrett Corey in that wounded Luke Mansky machine sits in 7th with Taylor Thurman behind him. And then Luke Reed and Clay Kirkenbauer is the rest of the top 10.
Now let's hop back to that Taylor Thurman machine as he's going to be looking to make this pass on Jarrett Corey. He's had a quiet night so far. He started 10th. He's worked his way up to the 8th spot and is slowly working his way forward. He's got the likes of Luke Reed just behind him. He'll make the pass on Jarrett Corey heading off turn number 4 here. Corey still trying to nurse that damaged car around here just past the halfway mark here from Milwaukee. And I think what we're starting to see now is drivers having to maybe have paid the cost with tire wear. We saw Luke Reed running near the front of the field, and it's now running about 0.6 slower than his fastest lap so far here tonight. So he's definitely hit a wall in terms of that tire life.
For sure, and now you're just seeing Luke is struggling to pass Corey. Corey's on the wall! Corey got the wall there on the exit of 4. Let everyone by. That car is not handling well there, Jacob. What I was going to say is it seemed that Luke was having a hard time passing Jarrett, and that was a sign of just how bad Luke Reed's tires were.
It could be a good bit of that. It could be just a lack of experience, maybe a bit of hesitation being so close to some of these cars. You know, it's the first time we've seen him on the top split here in Indy NXT competition, so it's probably just getting familiar with just how much you can really give, how much you can really take around the track here, and I believe Corey's gone around.
Yeah, he has gone around, lost the rear wing. Car looks to be crabbing slightly. Oh, yeah, that's not a healthy Dallara IL-15.
Yeah, well,
and what I was going to say is he was going to be hoping for a caution to maybe get some of that damage fixed, but was certainly hoping he wasn't going to be the caution.
Yeah, and he'll head down the pit lane and see if he can get any of that fixed, if at all. Imagine the rear wing repair going to take more time than he'd like. We'll hop back to the replay here, get an idea of how Jarrett got in this situation. We're heading off turn 4 here. We've got John Corwin, and I believe this is going to be Miles Morris. I'd have to get a closer look at who this is behind here. That's going to be the 8 machine of Wayne Campbell. Campbell's going to look to the inside here. Corey's going to come down. Two will make contact into turn number 1 and send the Luke Mansky Esports Racing machine into the outside wall, rear end first, and that'll likely be night done for the driver of the 13 here tonight. Not able to double up on the success found from Zandvoort last night. He'll be looking to rebound come next week when we take on Interlagos and Lucas Oil IRP. No, that's another group of drivers is looking forward to there in Indianapolis. Back under yellow, pace car still has its pace lights on. Blaze Andrich has made it into the top 10 after starting fairly deep in this field. Let's highlight that real quick. He started 12th, went as low as 14th. He's worked his way back inside the top 10 in 9th, and he's maybe started to garner some momentum after maybe saving a bit of tire in the early stages here.
Exactly. I was actually about to highlight it if you didn't, Jacob. Blaze was keeping his car clean, keeping his tires clean, not scrubbing them. He was all over the back of Clay Kirkenbauer and Luke Reed in that group when they got held up behind the wounded car of Jared Corey. And I'm sure a lot of that is just taking care of his rubber.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be the case that the drivers that have been the most lax on their tires have stayed near the front of the field by and large here tonight, maintained control of their car throughout the going of this race. Lights will be out on the pace car. We'll have one more, or well, this will be the final lap before we go back to green here. Vilashinsky leads over Kirkenbauer, a pair of cars that we've seen week in and week out here in the Indy NXT Oval Series at the front of the field. They'll be followed up by Zachary Falm, Ryan A. Brown, last week's winner, Crashed Neon, Chris Fletcher, Taylor Thurman, Luke Reed, Blaze Andrich, Clay Kirkenbauer, Jason Goodman, Wayne Campbell, John Corwin, Gary Yost, and Miles Morris, the last of the 15 cars that remain out on the course on the lead lap. We'll see who can make some moves with coming to 15 to go here as the pace car is going to pull down off turn number 4.
Field is in the hands of Dylan Vilashinsky. Pace car dives onto pit road, and Vilashinsky launches.
Another sizable launch for the driver of the number 1 Get Good Racing machine. He'll get out to about a 4/10 of a second lead off the launch here. We'll see if Indy's able to do anything here, try to maintain pace. See gaps about 4/10 there, 4/10 back to Falm behind him. Ryan Brown's on the back of Zachary Falm, actually, so he might be able to break through for another podium here, but nearly makes contact with that turn 4 wall.
Yeah, and then you see Chris Fletcher and Crest Neon currently side by side. They are fighting over that 5th spot.
Yeah, Neon has it. Fletcher wants it. You're going to see Blaze Andrich nearly get into the likes of Luke Reed coming off of turn number 4 there. That'll move the Rogue Racing driver up to 8th rather. He'll be looking to try to hunt down Taylor Thurman in the 7th spot. Reed getting looked on by Jason Goodman to the inside now. That'll put Goodman up to 10th as long as Reed doesn't have anything to say about it. Reed's going to battle back on the outside into turn number 1 here. Goodman will take the inside look to the inside of Clay Kirkenbauer, and they'll head off turn 2, and that'll put Goodman up to 10th trying to hunt down the number 12 of Mr. Kirkenbauer.
Yeah, it looks like Crash Neon is making some progress on last week's winner, Ryan Brown.
Yeah, he's managed to break away from Chris Fletcher in 6th. He's looking on Ryan Brown for 4th now. Rolling nice and low on the bottom here. He'll have a good bit of momentum heading down the back straightaway here, and we'll see if he can make the move heading off turn number 4 here this time by.
Looks as though Crash has gotten the position. But Ryan looks to be trying to find a way, trying to find an opening there on the high side. Trying to pinch down Crash Neon. You live by the pinch, you die by the pinch. But it looks to be where Crash has, again, cleared Ryan A. Brown.
Crash is going to start to work his way forward. He'll have an opportunity to maybe take a shot at Zach Falm for the third spot now. Oh, we got a car around.
The yellow flag is out.
It's going to be Clay Kirkenbauer and Jason Goodman, I believe, involved in this one. We'll have to see what happened to both of them this time around. Goodman, I think, stays out of the wall, so he'll be able to roll back going here. Clay, unfortunately, with the beat ball flag, opts to tow his vehicle back to the pit lane. Let's see if we can get a look from the outboard of what happened to Mr. Goodman.
Yeah, looks a classic case of two cars going for the same bit of real estate. Looks as if Jason Goodman on the low side washes up from all the way down from the bottom into the top of into Clay Kirkenbauer, who was pretty much riding the wall. There was only like maybe half a car between him and the wall, so just one of those racing deals, Jacob.
Yeah, that certainly seems like running out of space off the corner, and the walls here are basically flat. You know, the either end of the track transitions into a perfectly flat wall, not something like we see at maybe the likes that we saw at Iowa last week, transitioning onto that front stretch. That'll put Goodman in the pit lane, likely for some level of repairs, even without the meatball flag. We'll see if he's able to rejoin at any point before this race concludes. That'll give us one more restart here late in the going. And I think that we've got an interesting case on our hands with Crash Neon maybe having figured out how to get that thing to fire off on these restarts fairly well for the first couple laps.
For sure, because there's approximately only going to be maybe 5-6 laps of green flag running before we hit the end of this race, Jacob. So if you can really hook this car up at the start of the run, then yeah, you're going to be at an advantage. But if you're someone who needs to take some time to get up and running, you're going to be watching those mirrors.
Yeah, so Zach Falm holds on to third. We'll see if Crash Neon has anything to say about maybe working his way back onto a podium here in Indy NXT competition. Vilashinsky leads as he has from the drop of the green. Indy Kirkenbauer, current reigning series champion, will be second. You got Ryan Brown rounding out the top five. Chris Fletcher, Taylor Thurman, Blaze Andrich, Luke Reed, Wayne Campbell, John Corwin, Gary Yost. Miles Morris of the 13 out on the course. Well, thank everybody for tuning in. We'll thank Whiplash SimCams for providing the cameras here tonight. We also want to let everybody know that to like, comment, subscribe, share the stream with your friends, family, anybody you'd like to come watch our coverage here of Indy NXT or IndyCar here on P1 Broadcasting. We also have a GoFundMe link in the description of the stream for you to donate to us monetarily. We do these on behalf of the community. They are not free or easy to do, but we do them for our love of the game, if you will. And the pace car is going to pull down off turn number 4 here, put Vilashinsky in control of the field. We'll see if he does what he's done all night long and get a solid jump on this restart here.
For sure, and it seems he is going later. Now he launches!
Being unpredictable is predictable for restarts. This is likely the best we've seen out of Indy Kirkenbauer on these restarts so far here tonight, but just not quite enough to maintain even speed with Dylan at the front of the field here.
For sure. It seems that he kind of predicted the launch point when he started to bog down there, but not enough to really gain enough momentum to challenge Dylan Vilashinsky.
Gap sits at around 0.3 of a second. Likewise is the gap between Crash Neon and Zach Falm for that third spot. We thought maybe Crash would have something here, and he's stayed even keel more or less with Mr. Falm for this third spot here. You've got Ryan Brown and Chris Fletcher just behind them here. Any opportunity that these drivers might have to try to maybe make up a spot here late in the going, I think they're going to have to take.
Yeah, as we see Blaze Andrich working over Taylor Thurman right now. That's for the 7th spot.
Blaze looking to the inside off turn 4 here. Put Thurman in a tight spot up near the wall, but Blaze is going to tuck back into line with Luke Reed right behind him. 2 to go
And it
here.
looks like Zach Flom is getting a little bit of a challenge now from Crash Neon.
If we work our way a bit forward here, Crash is finally caught in the back of Mr. Flom. We'll see if he's got a shot to take something here with the 1 lap to go here from Milwaukee.
A white flag in the air. It's all going to be about trying to set it up so that you get enough of momentum to carry you to the line, as we see Crash Neon running a higher line than Zach Flom, trying to build momentum. Just not quite close enough. A good effort from Crash, but is ultimately going to finish 4th. Zach Flom 3rd. Indy Kirkwood 2nd. Jillian Vilashinsky once again victorious.
Looks like 1 off week is all we're going to get from the Vilashinsky dominance here in the Indy NXT Oval Series. He returns to the top step of the podium here tonight after another dominant performance. He'll get to the front straightaway and likely start burning it down here once more. A very common sight here in Indy NXT competition. We haven't even made it to a double-digit win or unique winner count here in the Oval Series. No, in large part due to Vilashinsky's dominance so far in this season. He'll work down further down the front straightaway here, wait for all these cars to get down the pit lane, and he'll start doing his burnouts as we've seen many a times here on the channel. And we'll get to the rest of the finishing results here. That will be Dylan Vilashinsky winning once more from the pole. Half a second back to Andy Kirkwood. He'll finish in 2nd. Zach Flom will finish 3rd, 1 second adrift. Crash Neon will finish 4th. Solid run for him. Ryan A. Brown, the winner from last week at Iowa. He'll finish 5th. Chris Fletcher 6th. Blaze Andrich made his way up to 7th on that final restart there after starting deep in this field. Rogue Racing number 3 for him. Taylor Thurman will finish 8th. We know we got Taylor Thurman fans in the chat each and every week, so it's good to see him get a solid run here on the show. Luke Reed, in his top split debut, will finish 9th after starting near the front of the field here tonight. Wayne Campbell will round out the top 10. We got Gary Yost in 11th, John Corwin in 12th, Miles Morris in 13th, Jason Goodman will finish 14th, 1 down, Clay Kirkenbauer 8 laps down rather, Jarrett Corey and JW Miller facing issues throughout the event here tonight. And we will get whoever we get here for podium interviews from Milwaukee here. Dylan's got his car parked in prime position.
Sure, we see some of the podium finishers starting to find their ways in here. Many of them not too unfamiliar with the process.
Yeah, we'll get Zach Flom's car up on the screen here. As I've seen, he's rolled into the interview room. We'll roll him on up here. Ooh. Zach, Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcasting. You got us?
I sure do.
Well, I think this is the first time we've seen you here for the Indy NXT Series, either one of them here on the channel. Certainly a solid run after starting near the front of the field here tonight. Kind of walk us through how you navigated 55 laps here from a very tricky track here in Milwaukee.
Yeah, honestly, Milwaukee is just like my bread and butter, I feel like. And the car was pretty well set up, or I mean, it felt pretty well set up, but I was running at 1.5 because I just needed more rotation, and even then it was still hard to follow behind Indy and Dylan. So honestly, it was a track position race, qualified pretty well, and had to keep my position, and I was hoping it would just stay green the entire time, but those late cautions kind of put me in a couple positions that I probably didn't necessarily want to be in, but I'm happy with the result.
Yeah, you talked about track position, but I think the big thing we also saw kind of impact a lot of drivers that maybe started near the front of this field and fell through was tire management. It seemed like a lot of people really got caught out by just how much you were going to need to conserve those Firestone tires over the course of this race. Kind of talk us through what maybe you did that kept your tires in a good position to keep you up here to the front the whole way through.
Yeah, I think honestly it was mostly not sending it too deep into the corner here. Like, if you're not in the position to pass, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to really dive it in deep. So what I was trying to do was lift early, kind of coast it in, and then would help with the drive off, kind of get a straight run. So even if you're pushing out to the wall, you're not really scrubbing the right front. But yeah, no, it was definitely a kind of an air management, tire management race, as Milwaukee is oftentimes. So, yeah, it felt like a good run, and I don't think I really had anything for Indy or Dylan up there, but if they made a mistake, I was gonna be there to pounce. So.
Well, they've certainly been the class of the field, so being in contention here throughout this race is good fortunes for you. Sophie, you got anything else for Zach here tonight?
Yeah, Zach, obviously most people on P1 Broadcasting know you for the Formula Indy series, where you've been quite dominant on the ovals. Fortunately, big difference between these two cars is you don't have the weight jacker. Did you find yourself wanting to add some positive weight jacker throughout that run?
Oh, definitely. I was talking with someone in my chat, and uh, I was like, "Hey, how can I make this thing looser?" And they were like, "Have you tried weight jacker?" And I was like, "Well, I'm in the Indy NXT car, not the Indy car, because they're just so used to me running that one." Yeah, I was definitely. It would have been nice to be able to crank that weight jacker up a little bit, throw some positive clicks at it, but yeah, I was, like I said, I was content with how it went. Looking at Dylan's right rear, just on the replay, it looks all burnt up and stuff. So I can only imagine how loose he was running it. So.
Well, as the Indy NXT rulebook says, weight jackers are not permitted, but nonetheless, you've put up a solid run without it nonetheless, Zach. Friends, family, sponsors, floor is yours. You know the drill.
Yeah, just want to give a shout out to P1 and y'all for broadcasting this. I know you guys have been broadcasting a lot of, or all of the main strength of field races for this car and for the IndyCar. So I really appreciate that. It adds a lot to the community, and obviously we're in business with you at FRS, the Formula Racing Series, and we've got. We just announced in our Discord today the schedule for the Formula Super Series Season 4 coming up, and we'll make sure that gets sent out to other Discords and Reddit and all that stuff. But if anybody wants to run a pretty competitive Super Formula League that actually will be broadcasted, I believe, by both of you, where you definitely will not be talking to me on the broadcast anytime soon on that one, but yeah, Formula Super Series, the signups are open, and be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, we'll be on the call for that in just 2 weeks' time. I believe round number 1 takes place from the Miami International Autodrome, which is a track that was brand new. We saw it just a couple weeks ago from the Indy NXT Road Series. We'll catch you there, Zach, and we'll maybe catch you a couple more times here in Indy NXT competition or IndyCar competition here on P1. We'll catch you later.
Yep, have a good one.
That'll do it for Mr. Falm. Get him back on down there. We'll get Indy Kirkenbauer on up here. Vote of racing driver putting up another solid run here. Maybe not quite as good as he had hoped, but Indy Kirkenbauer, Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcast. You got us?
Yeah, I got you.
Well, you put it on the front row. You kept it there the whole way through. Maybe wanted to make a little bit more forward progress. Kind of walk us through the race here for you. Definitely felt like you maybe had something a couple times on restarts, but just not able to keep that momentum going to challenge Dylan for the win here tonight.
Yeah, I knew whoever it will be, you have to drive it a lot different with the steering angles and throttle inputs than the IndyCar, but the line is a lot similar. Except just, well, the arc you have to take to the bottom similar, and I knew with less of a top side with the lower powered cars with these, whoever wins the race is whoever wins the pole is going to win the race most likely, and I just got a little bit too tight / underdrove turn 1 and 2. I hit 3 and 4 good, but I just wish I wouldn't have messed up my cue. But you know, seconds okay. I just hope I can do better next week.
Yeah, we talked a good bit with Zach about how dirty air was a decent bit of a factor here. Combine that with the fairly sizable tire fall off we saw a number of drivers face throughout this race. Kind of walk us through what it's like having to manage kind of those degrading factors back in the field as you try to work your way to stay near the front of it.
Yeah, it was just, I know my dad was deep in the field, and he lost spots on the bottom. It was like when you went to the bottom because you couldn't get as wide of an exit. The person on the top would go through. So at least there was a little bit of tire wear, but so I'm sure if somebody in the back like saved their tires, they could have made some moves. But you know, it was an interesting race. I definitely found some stuff with the car in the last 2 weeks. I've gotten a lot closer to Dylan than the first 3 weeks, but you know, I'm just hoping that I can get one spot better next week at IRP, because I don't do much practice for these anymore because of IndyCar, but I know next week I will be doing, because IndyCar's Talladega. There's no reason practicing for that, so you know, I hope to do good next week.
Well, we'll certainly be hoping to catch you next week, Indy. If you got anybody that you want to shout out, you know the drill. Friends, family, sponsors, floor is yours.
Yeah, Fremont. BGM Marine Associates. Bayside Comfort Heating and Cooling. The Alley, and Make Something on YouTube. Thanks for putting the broadcast on. Yeah, it was a good race. Yeah, thanks for, at least for my race, everyone kept it clean, so that's good.
Well, a clean race and a P2 finish, nothing too much to sneeze at for you, Indy. We'll catch you next week at IRP, and maybe we'll see you for the Road Series at Interlagos as well.
Yeah, I'll be at both Indy next, so yeah, I'm really anticipating both of those, the road and oval. So excited for next week with both next series, and hope to maybe get a double next podium.
There we go. That's the spirit, Indy. We'll get him next week out here in Indy Next competition. Go celebrate, Indy. Another solid run for you here tonight.
Yep, thank you.
That'll do it for our second place finisher here tonight. We're going to see if we can catch... Yeah, there we go. We caught Dylan's car back on the front stretch. He's still sitting there. Get Dylan on up here finally. Mr. Vilashinsky back on the top step of the podium here tonight. Dylan, you got us up here in the booth. Jacob Collins, Sophie Connell, P1 Broadcasting.
Got you loud and clear.
Well, you put it on the pole kind of in very unsurprising fashion, and then proceeded to lead every lap start to finish, putting together those restarts throughout the race. Kind of walk us through what you felt you were learning out there here from the 1 mile track here in Milwaukee.
You say getting on pole as per usual, but it sure didn't feel like per usual. I thought for sure I was going to get passed by like 3 or 4 cars as the time started rolling in, because I was positive I screwed up my qualifying lap. But I guess I somehow got it. From the drop of the green, it was push as hard as I possibly could. I was watching that relative the entire race, watching Indy to see if I was gaining or losing anything to him. But yeah, I just pushed as hard as I could, try not to overheat the tires, and just hang on for the win.
Yeah, we had kind of talked pre-race as to maybe what the strategy would look like for drivers here tonight, especially given that tire wear was going to be a big factor. You talked about pushing in the early stages. Were you potentially nervous if it came down to some of these later race restarts like we got, that maybe cars that had done a bit better or a bit different of a job trying to keep those tires underneath them would have had something to maybe challenge you at the front of the field, or you just feel like you had the racing control, being able to control the restarts and get a sizable launch off each one of those?
I think for the restarts, I felt like I was going to be fine. because I was always getting pretty good jumps each time the green flag dropped. But at the start, I was pushing as hard as I could because in the 8:30 that went official last night, I was getting caught on the long run, and if the race had gone green the whole time, with Indy behind me, I'm not 100% sure I could have held him off, but luckily for me, we didn't have to worry about super long runs tonight.
Yeah, certainly a fortunate set of circumstances nonetheless. Sophie, you got anything for Dylan here tonight?
Dylan, how driven were you to make sure that you found yourself once again on the top step of the rostrum after the disappointment last week at Iowa?
I'm not gonna lie, I was a little peeved last week when I was getting a little greedy and spun myself out for no reason. And I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit of a knock on the confidence. All week I've been thinking about it's like, okay, I gotta be perfect at Milwaukee to try to, get back in the groove and get back to trying to score as many points as I can, try and get this championship.
Well, Mike Wazinski, as someone's coined it in the chat here. Not sure if you know this individual who's referring to you as such, but the green car certainly helps that case. But commonplace here on the top step in Indy NXT Oval Series competition. Friends, family, sponsors, Dylan, you know the drill. Floor is yours.
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to Jack Clark, the team manager from Get Good Endurance, for getting 2 5-man teams set up and ready for Daytona last weekend, where both of our cars scored a top 10 finish. I'll give a shout out to Get Good Racing itself, and as usual, the Sprint Car Cup that runs 6 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
There we go. Dylan getting his due here for his sponsors and the groups that made him. We'll catch him likely next week as we head on to Lucas Oil, Indianapolis Raceway Park.
Yep, y'all have a good night. I'm excited for next week.
As are we, Dylan, and that'll do it for Podium interviews here from Milwaukee. We'll get the finishing lineup back up on the screen as we watch Dylan's car spin off behind us here. And Sophie, I think we had ourselves considerably a kind of classic Milwaukee race here with just how well strung the field got for those drivers that maybe mismanaged their tires here tonight.
For sure. I mean, we saw people who mismanaged their tires and fell back like a Luke Reed, but we also saw people who were managing their tires really well, then climb forward, such as Blaze Andrich. And then, unfortunately, some incidents like those with J.W. Miller, like those of Clay Kirkenbauer and Jason Goodman, and of course with Jarrett Cowery. Just classic case of fighting over which line you want, trying to find that clean air, and just miscommunicating and making contact.
Yeah, certainly a battle of attrition for both the tires, the drivers, the cars. Just a very, very tough track to get around here in Milwaukee, but that's why it's built the many, many great drivers it has over the course of its well over 100-year history. And we'll be looking forward to building some more history next week in Indy NXT competition. We'll be taking on the likes of Interlagos Monday night for the Road Series and Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park Tuesday night for the Oval Series. Same time, same channel. We'll catch you there. And I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in tonight, alongside all those that do the difficult jobs all around the world to let us bring you our coverage here on P1 Broadcasting. The firemen, the police, the ambulance drivers, and the nurse that unloads you when you get to the hospital. From the bottom of our hearts, we all thank you very, very much. We will catch you at the next race here on P1 Broadcasting. Have a good night, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.